So thanks everybody for joining us today. I'd spoken with Susanna a few months ago at one of the trade shows we were both at, and we had talked about just putting on a presentation about using data from Life Technologies, particularly flow cytometry data, in FCS Express. So some of you may or may not have heard of FCS Express or may not have seen it. So what I wanted to do today is give you a little bit of an overview about FCS Express, just a little bit of information about our company, about Novo Software, and then how you can work with data from the Attune in FCS Express. Because there are some things I noticed with the Attune data that it is on a 7-decade log scale, so sometimes scaling that data can be a little bit difficult in some pieces of software. And Suzanne kindly provided me with some data, some cell cycle data, and some immunophenotyping data that we can take a look at in the presentation today. So you get a better idea of how we can work with this data hands-on. And the other thing I wanted to mention today was working with data from the Life Tech Tali as well. I don't know how much the imaging side of Life Technologies talks to the flow cytometry side of Life Technologies, but what we have done is we have become compatible with the Life Technologies Tali data, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as well, just so everybody kind of knows what's going on there. So just to start, I just want to give you a little information about Novo Software. We've been in the flow cytometry game essentially since the beginning, so we've been around for about 15 years. We've been through 4 iterations of FCS Express since 1998, and right now we're on version 4. In version 3 in 2005, we also gained the IVD distinction, or we started offering the in vitro diagnostic version of FCS Express. And what that means is that we are registered with the FDA for IVD use of FCS Express. So just to be clear, we're not FDA approved, but we are registered with the FDA for IVD use. And that's one of the reasons that FCS Express is one of the clinical flow cytometry data analysis leaders. If you're going to be going to any hospitals or clinical diagnostic labs, they're going to be very familiar with FCS Express most likely. And we also have a very big presence in the research field as well. Just because we have this IVD distinction, we also have a research use only version that is heavily used throughout the world. Now, in version 4 of FCS Express, we also introduced what we call image cytometry, FCS Express image cytometry. And what that means is that we can take any kind of multi-parametric data that's coming from imaging experiments, just like the kind of data that's coming off of the Life Technologies Tali instrument, and we can bring that into FCS Express and start treating that data just like flow cytometry data. And the really nice thing about that is we can link directly back to the images as well. So if we have a dot plot showing fluorescence 1 versus fluorescence 2, we can identify subpopulations and link them back to the actual image of that cell. And in the last year, it's something we've worked with the imaging side with the Life Technologies Tali team to provide direct compatibility with that data. There's a third flavor of FCS Express besides flow cytometry and image cytometry. It's called the Plus version. And the Plus version essentially allows you to do flow cytometry and image cytometry work in the same package, which means that if somebody has a Life Technologies Attune and somebody has a Life Technologies Tali instrument, they could bring that data, both of those data sets, directly into FCS Express Plus, which is going to allow them to look at data from 2 different sides, an imaging instrument and a flow cytometry instrument, and look at that data any way they want in the same software package. So a little bit more about our philosophy at Novo Software and with FCS Express. We try to develop these advanced scientific data tools not just for visualization and interpretation of the data, but also for reporting. So anything that you see today, it's a very sophisticated data analysis reporting package as well. And we try and facilitate results generations from many instruments and platforms. Like you kind of just heard, we can take the Attune and the Tali data and bring that all into one place. So we try and make it a one-stop shop for your analysis from many instruments, whether it be different flow cytometers or it be different imaging platforms. And that being said, we're compatible with any FCS files that come off of any machines, 2.0, 3.0. It doesn't matter, how that scaling looks, whether if it's on a 10-decade log or if it's 2.0 data that's on 1024 channels. We can certainly handle all of that. And we try and remove workflow redundancies. What will happen is a lot of time people will set up their analysis, they'll try and get some data, and then they'll copy and paste things into PowerPoint, they'll bring things into Excel. Then if they change around what they did in their analysis, they kind of have to do all that over again. In FCS Express, we have direct export to PowerPoint, we have direct export to Excel, to lab information systems, all sorts of batch processing functions that allow the user to set something up once and then use that template over and over again and do these exports rather quickly. And we try and make it all very affordable. Our price point for FCS Express is right in the middle of everybody else. So it's not like it's super, super expensive. We also try and provide really good online support and training resources for our customers. And we get a lot of comments about how good our support is. And for somebody that's working in the lab who's not very familiar with flow cytometry data or another piece of software, we think that's something that's very important for them. So that's just a kind of basic overview of de novo software. But what I wanted to do today is show you how to start working with data in FCS Express. So again, Susan sent over some data files that I'm going to be analyzing in the software today. She had also sent over some PDFs of what that data analysis looked like when it was done with the software from the Attune. So what I'm going to try and do is mock up what that analysis looks like a little bit in FCS Express, and then also show you some of the things that you can do in FCS Express and some of the reasons why maybe somebody would use a third-party piece of software to take that data out of the Attune software and start using it in a third-party package. So to start, we're actually in FCS Express right now. This welcome to the meeting screen is actually just a large text box. And FCS Express looks and feels just like Microsoft PowerPoint. And that's not by accident. It's totally by design. Our president and CEO, David Novo, when he was in the lab, 15 years ago, somebody had asked, can you make a piece of software for analyzing our data that kind of looks like PowerPoint? Just because everybody knows how to use PowerPoint, everybody knows how to use Microsoft Office. So it makes the learning curve for learning the software much less steep. It's very easy to come in here and start working with data. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on what we call the Applications button up here and choose New Layout. And what this is going to do, it's going to insert a blank page on the screen. And again, this looks just like Microsoft Word. Or if we make this layout, if I just change the page orientation here to landscape, this looks like more like PowerPoint. So essentially what we're going to be doing is creating a PowerPoint presentation with flow cytometry data. And to do this, we can use all the different tools in FCS Express that are in this ribbon and tab system. So we have things like an inserting tab like you would have in PowerPoint, a text tab like you would have in PowerPoint, and even a formatting tab for formatting everything about your plots. But we also have some tabs here that are specific for flow cytometry data, like gating, doing a batch iterative analysis of your data, and working with your data in something that's called multi-cycle. I just wanted to introduce you to multi-cycle real quickly since we'll be looking at cell cycle data. For those of you who aren't familiar with multi-cycle, it's a cell cycle analysis modeling tool that is sold by Phoenix Flow Systems. We've partnered with Phoenix Flow Systems many years ago, and we can do multi-cycle based cell cycle analysis within FCS Express. So essentially we're using this multi-cycle add-on in FCS Express to do the cell cycle analysis. Now, in version 4, the basic cell cycle analysis comes free with FCS Express. So if somebody purchases FCS Express, they'll be able to do the cell cycle modeling within the software right away. If their cell cycles deviate greatly from the basic cell cycle, they would have to purchase an add-on to work with kind of more advanced cell cycles, where you're looking at 3, 4 kind of peaks in there, and euploid populations, things like that. But to get started in FCS Express, we're going to take a look at some cell cycle data. And if we want to insert a plot in FCS Express, it's going to be just like inserting a plot in PowerPoint, or inserting a picture in PowerPoint. In fact, you could even insert a picture, a shape, or a text box like you could in PowerPoint. But when we're in FCS Express, we would choose, say, a color dot plot. And I'm going to draw a box on this layout. And it's going to prompt me to go find that data. Where is it? So I'm going to come in here and find my data. And I apologize, I kind of buried it in here. But we have some cell cycle data. And you notice if I click on my files of type drop-down, I'm in the FCS Express Plus version, which means I have access to flow cytometry data like FCS files. But I also have access to imaging data, including this Life Technologies Tali data folder, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But what I'm going to do is just choose this file and click Open. And this is the file that opened in FCS Express. What's going to happen with this data when you open it up in FCS Express? It's going to default to show the first versus the second parameter, where in a lot of cases with a lot of machines that's forward scatter versus side scatter, but with this data from the Attune, it's time versus events. So probably what we want to do is change this to something that we can start analyzing. And if you want to change any of the parameters on the axis in FCS Express, you just click and hold on the axis, and you have access to all the different parameters here. And it looks like with this data set, we acquired BL1 through BL3, VL1 through VL3, and we did the area, height, and width parameters for all of these things. So what I'm going to do is start with side scatter versus forward scatter area. And you notice here that when you look at this data in the Attune software, it's probably going to be scaled a little bit differently. Here in FCS Express, we're trying to bring in the native scaling, and it may look a little compressed to some people. But what we do is we make it very easy in FCS Express to rescale this data. And there's a few ways that you could do it. I'm going to show you the hard way first, just because this is the way that you may be doing it in some other piece of software. But you could always right-click on a plot and choose Format. Besides scaling, this is going to get you into a lot of the other features in FCS Express. But one of the scaling things that we may want to do here is we can change the range for the X and the Y axes. And we can also do things like in our color dot options, actually change the resolution of this data. So there's a lot of things you could do here to change the resolution and change the scaling. That seems kind of overwhelming for a lot of users. So just being said, that's how you'd have to do it in a lot of other softwares. In FCS Express, what you can do is right-click, and you notice that down on the bottom here, we have an option for Magnify Resolution. And this is a great button, so we click this. We can draw a box anywhere on this plot around any of the data. And if we know that this is the kind of population we want to zoom in on, it's going to zoom and magnify to that particular axis and resolution there. So not only are we magnifying the axis, we're actually magnifying the resolution to get the ideal resolution for this data. So with this data, it's starting to look a little bit more reasonable now how to work with this. And you can always come in if you need to magnify more. You could always come in here and try and grab a closer up area and zoom in on that a little bit more. But with the Attune data, I think using this Magnify Resolution tool is going to be something very important for working with some of this data. It's something that people who are using the BD Accuracy 6, who are working with a 7-decade log scale, use quite often as well. It's just one of those things of having such a large dynamic range, which is a great thing in my opinion, but being able to zoom into the relevant portion of that data in the range, making that easy, is something that we try to excel at. So with this data, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first set up a gate on it. We probably want to first identify this live cell population. So I went to the gating tab, I clicked on a polygon gate, and I'm creating some polygon gating coordinates here just by clicking, and I'll call these live cells. And if I click OK, you notice that these cells became red. We're indicating that there's 62% of the cells in this gate, and as we move that gate around, these statistics are going to update for us in real time as well. Now, since we're going to be setting up a few different gates for this analysis, I'm going to insert what we call a gate view from the Insert tab. And this gate view is going to show us all of the gates that we set up, and it's also going to allow us to define hierarchies and apply gates from the gate view to other plots. And there's a few ways in FCS Express that we can apply gates to other plots. One thing we can do here is if we wanted to insert another plot, say a color dot plot, we want to change to some parameters that we're going to be using to identify singlets. So I'm going to go here to the BL2A versus the BL2 height. And again, you notice these are all kind of jammed up here in the upper right. So what I'm going to do is a magnify resolution first. We're going to grab this population to zoom in. I'm going to do one more of those, see if I can't grab a little bit more of this data in the upper right. And if we'd like to apply this gate, this live cells gate, to this new plot, there's a few ways that we can do it. The simplest way is drag this gate on that plot and drop it, and the gate's applied. And that's one of the simplest things you can do in FCS Express. If it makes sense to drag and drop something somewhere, kind of dragging and dropping a gate onto another plot, give it a shot. It will probably work. We've tried to enable as much drag and drop functionality in FCS Express as possible. And if we wanted to see what gate is applied to this plot, we would come over to the gating tab, and when we have this plot selected, when we click on it, you'll notice that it says live cells here. If we were to change this back to no gate, it will now say no gate, and we can notice that no gate is applied. And another nice way to display which gate a plot is gated on is, again, this right-click and format, which is kind of your best friend in FCS Express. If we come here to the titles, we can type in some of our own text here. We can just say current gate. But then we can choose a keyword, and the keyword that we can choose is current gate. And when we put that in there, it's going to show us that the current gate is no gate. And if I were to apply this live cells gate, maybe from the gate view this time by dragging and dropping, as you apply that gate, it shows you which gate is applied to that plot. So when you have lots and lots of plots and you have lots of gates set up, having that gate name in the title is something that's very useful to a lot of people. So the next thing we want to do here is set up a singlets gate, and I'm going to very crudely draw this on here, and we'll just call this singlets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of this gate. I want to make it blue instead of gray. And you'll notice that here's our singlets gate, and they encompass about 96% of the cells in this particular plot. You'll also notice that we're backgating the cells within the singlets gate over here onto our forward versus side scatter plot, and that they're appearing as blue. Now what's going on here is if we look in our gate view, the singlets gate is at the same level of the live cells gate. And that's why these are kind of exclusive of each other, or non-exclusive of each other. They're just backgating all the events. If we want to change the hierarchy of our gates at any time, we work directly in this gate view, and we can drag the singlets gate on top of the live cells, and you can see that we just created a hierarchy. It indicates that these are below each other, and now that we've done that, all of the singlet cells backgated in blue fall within this live cells gate. And also you notice that they're all appearing here in blue as well as exclusive. So through a lot of this drag and drop, it's very quick and easy to apply these gates, to change the gating hierarchy, and do things like that. Now, the next kind of plot that was presented in this analysis that was sent over to me was a histogram. Again, setting up a histogram, if we want to come up to the Insert tab and a histogram, we can simply just draw a histogram on the plot. And for this particular histogram, we're going to look at BL2H. And again, you notice that all the data is up here on the high end of the dynamic range. So we're going to do two things. First off, we're going to apply the singlets gate by dragging it down here. And you notice that's going to get rid of a lot of the debris from the things that aren't live cells and also the doublets that are probably over here up against the axes. And I'm also going to do this right-click magnify resolution and zoom in on this portion of the histogram. So that way we have a good-looking histogram. We're only looking at between 10 to the 6th and 10 to the 7th, and we're able to really come in here and start analyzing this cell cycle data. Now, when you're analyzing this data in the Attune, I noticed that there was just markers being used. So if we wanted to set up a marker on this, we could click on Create Marker, create this marker in here, and we'll do one for, say, the G1, one for the S, and one for the G2. And if we wanted to do that, it's a very quick and easy way to do that. We can even convert these markers to gates. If we wanted to right-click here and say, Convert Marker 1, say Convert and Link, and we'll call this G0. Let's make this bright green so we can see it elsewhere. But we now have this G0 gate appearing here. I'm going to make this a child of the singlets as well. And we can kind of see right now backgated where that G0 population is. And let's say I apply this G0 gate to the live cells here. The nice thing about linking these gates is that as I move this marker now, you'll notice that that upper plot, or actually all these plots are changing to show us that gating change in real time. So the marker is now controlling everything that's going on with the gating. And it's a great way that you can convert these markers to actually start looking at gates of G0, and then you can apply that gate, G0 BL2H versus BL3H, and start getting more information about what's going on in just G0. Now, I took this layout a little bit further because in FCS Express we don't really want to set up markers for our DNA analysis. And the reason is we have the multi-cycle cell cycle analysis tool in FCS Express. So we have a way that's a little bit easier to start working with this data. Instead of just, say, right-clicking and getting statistics here for these three different markers and showing us, show our marker name here. Marker 1 is 37%, so that's G0, S phase, and G2. Another way that we could treat this data is if we click on this plot, come up to our Format tab, and say Change Plot Type to a multi-cycle DNA plot. And what this is going to do is convert this histogram from a static histogram just showing the events to a live updating cell cycle analysis that's replete with all of the cell cycle statistics that are involved. And since I have this set up now, I'm actually going to delete these markers, so you no longer need these. And what we get here is a modeling of this data. So not only are we getting what would be considered falling underneath the marker, you'll notice in this portion of the plot there's actually an overlap because there are G0 cells that are going to be kind of transforming into the S phase, and we can see where that overlap is through the modeling. And we also get that, of course, from the the G2, the S phase going into G2. Not all G2 cells, right on this line right here, are going to be completely G2. You're going to be having some cells that are kind of coming over from S phase into G2. So with the multi-cycle modeling, we get this modeling done for us. And if we right-click here, we can get not just standard histogram statistics, but we can get all sorts of DNA cell cycle statistics. So if I get my basic cell cycle statistics here, you notice that we're putting out the %G1, %G2, %S. We get certain ratios. We get all sorts of calculations. If we right-click here, we can see all of those. But with multi-cycle, there's a lot more statistics that you can get out of this. We get a model summary statistic, and I'll put this down here. And what this shows us is the 6 different multi-cycle models. So if you have the full version of multi-cycle, you can choose between which of the 6 models for fitting that data makes the most sense. Normally, somebody would choose the model that has the lowest chi-squared value for that data. And with this model summary statistics, you can actually compare all these side by side. And kind of finally, the last thing that multi-cycle will give you is these DNA experiment statistics. So they'll give you an idea of what's going on with this cell cycle based on what multi-cycle sees in the modeling. So they can see here that there is no abnormal DNA. It gives you the diploid populations, how good the S-phase confidence is, and a few other things about the experiment statistics that may be useful. So there's a lot of things you can do here with this multi-cycle analysis once you have that in there. And what I wanted to do is just pull over another layout here. This is one that I had worked on previously just to make it look a little bit more visually pleasing. This is a kind of mock-up of what this data looked like in the Attune software from the PDF that was provided. So you can see we can certainly set up these markers and change the histogram colors and have our gating and have all of our markers here and all the statistics we want. But on this FCS Express analysis page that I set up, we did the same thing, but we used the multi-cycle modeling. We changed some of the colors here so that we can see the overlays a little bit more easily. And we also put up a custom statistics table that we created in FCS Express ourselves to show us quickly and easily the number of events and the percentages for the different phases of the cell cycle. And this was something that was created in a text box, just like if you inserted a text box in PowerPoint or Word. You could come into this text box and create a table and put anything in that table you want. And that's essentially what we did here. And in FCS Express, you're going to see in a few minutes, you can build up some very complex tables for dealing with data and trying to summarize things in one place. So that's kind of cell cycle analysis in a nutshell for FCS Express. Again, it's just very quick and easy to do. And if you had in your data list, or this is kind of where we summarize what experiments you want to work on, if you had 100 samples that you ran that day in this data list, you could just load them all up in here. And when you're ready to do this analysis on everything, you can just play through all the different files that you added here. You don't have to recreate any of the gates, any of the statistics. All that's going to update in real time. And when you're ready to export this data, say maybe save this to a PowerPoint, we can do a one-click kind of export here to PowerPoint and say open the presentation after saving. And I believe on my other screen here we go, PowerPoint is opening up, and this is our analysis in PowerPoint now. All these are super high resolution graphics, so if you need to have this data go out to a poster or off to a publisher, we try and make it very quick and easy to get that done without a lot of copying and pasting. And with all the formatting options we have, if you needed to change anything about the colors or the fonts on here, you could do that in FCS Express rather than putting another little white text box over the axes labels in PowerPoint or in Photoshop. So what I wanted to move on to quickly was working with immunophenotyping data in FCS Express. And I'm going to show you some of the Attune data, but I'm also going to show you some examples of some other immunophenotyping assays that we spent a lot more time working on to actually put these things together. But what I have here, I'm going to open up a new layout, is again a similar data set, except it's a 6-color immunophenotyping assay. And what we'll do is change this page setup again to a landscape, and we'll insert a color dot plot. And what I want you to notice about this data is we actually have quite a few data files in here. You remember I just said with the cell cycle data, if you have more than one file, you can add them to the data list. So when I choose this unstained sample, I click here and I look at my data list, we actually brought in all the data that was contained within that folder. So we can start working with this all at the same time. And again, if we wanted to set this up really quickly, we can come over here and look at side scatter versus forward scatter and start setting up some gates. We'll set up a lymphocytes gate here real quickly. And the next thing we would probably want to do, open up another plot based on this gate. And what I didn't show you yet is you can also just drag a plot out or a gate out and drop it to open up a new plot that's gated on that population. So that's a very quick and easy way if you want to open up a new plot that's gated and start looking at some other parameters, like in this case for looking at singlet-based data, the forward scatter area versus forward scatter height. So let's actually remove that gate. And again, we'll just create a quick singlets gate here and call this singlets. And I could keep going through this gating strategy, but what I really wanted to show you with this quickly is that we can easily go through any of the different data files that are in this data list, and we can rearrange this data list. So right now we're working with just this unstained sample. So what I'm going to do is use this move selected files up, put that at the top, and I'm also going to put this 6-color sample up here at the top as well. So if I come over to my data tab now and I hit next, you notice that the name on this changed because it changed to the next data file in the data list. And this is a way that we can quickly and easily go through all the different files in our data list to start reviewing this data and reviewing the gating strategies that we set up. And I have this set up already. I'm going to bring over this other example of this layout so you get an idea of what the data looks like in FCS Express. And again, I'll open up the data list. And you can see here that we're on our 6-color sample. We set up a little bit more of a gating strategy here. And again, please excuse me, I didn't go too far into analyzing this data in particular, and the compensation looks like I didn't really set that up correctly. But the idea behind this is if you have, say, a complicated analysis, you have 6 colors here, you're going to have a bunch of gates, and you wanted to recreate this analysis from week to week, you don't want to have to set all this up every single time. So one thing you can do in FCS Express is save this analysis. And if we remove this data from the data list, you notice that all of our plots went blank. Now what we can do is say we come in next week and we want to do the same immunophenotyping assay again. We can just load up all of our data files into the data list and watch as I click open. It's going to populate all of these plots for us immediately. And again, we're working on the order in this data list, so we're working off of the calibration BL1 file first. So of course you'd expect to see something in the BL1 channel here. But again, as we hit next through these data files, we can quickly and easily review what's going on with all these particular data files. And we'll just keep clicking through here back to the 6-color specimen sample. So that's how we can start working with this data very quickly and easily in FCS Express and loading these things into templates. And what you'll probably want to do is once you have all of this data in FCS Express, we have all these different quadrants set up that are all kind of updating for us in real time as we move them or change the data. We want to summarize all of these statistics somewhere. And to do that, I showed you before that you can use tables. And rather than setting up a really complex table with this data, I wanted to show you an example of something we've done already in FCS Express. So let's open up, let's say, this B-cell phenotyping assay that I'd put together. But this is a great example of using a table on your front page here and using a bunch of custom statistics in FCS Express and even live updating error bars in FCS Express. So as I change around some of my gates and my quadrants, you'll notice that those error bars are changing for us. So we can really summarize everything on one page, even if we have multiple pages of data here. You can see that for this immunophenotyping assay, there's really a lot of things going on. This is a lot more than a 6-color experiment. I think this is more like an 8 or a 10-color. But we can summarize all of this data in nice-looking areas in our PowerPoint presentation, and we can summarize the data from these transitional and mature B-cell pages all the way back on our front page here. And an even better example of that is kind of what people are doing in the clinical field. Is when they use our software in the clinical analysis, they'll typically set up what's called a panel, and they'll do their analysis on many, many pages. You can see here that as we move through these pages, there's all sorts of immunophenotyping that's going on here. But what we have is on the front page, we have these nice text boxes that we've created. We have all the relevant statistics that we want to show, even things like yield, the viability assessment. We even have some classifications here for viability and whatever else we want to include. And everything here, as we move a gate around, you notice that all of these statistics are updating for us in real time. And that's one of the great powers of FCS Express, is that you can summarize your analysis from all of these different pages, all of your kind of phenotyping assays directly on one page right in the beginning. And I think that's one of the big powers and one of the reasons, besides the whole registration with the FDA and being able to track everything that you're doing, is just being able to summarize everything in one spot to make the interpretation of the data much easier, whether that be for a pathologist or whether that be for a researcher who's just trying to summarize or make sense of what was going on with the particular experiment they did that day. So that's how we can handle immunophenotyping in FCS Express. Again, it's just setting up these plots however you'd like them. And again, once you set this up once, you never have to do it again. You can just load your new data into this analysis template, and the interpretation, or not the interpretation, but the presentation of your results is going to be done rather quickly and easily. So at this point, before I stop for some questions, I did want to quickly mention the Life Technologies Tali with the image cytometry data real quickly. You'll notice here that we have a report. If anybody's seen any data from the Tali, this may look kind of familiar. We based this layout in FCS Express exactly on the white paper from Tali, or exactly what this should look like in the Tali. This is imaging data coming from one of the Tali images. And in this image, we have a bright field, we have a GFP channel if we change to that, and an RFP channel. And you'll notice that there's cells that are in here, if I magnify this axis, that are all highlighted different colors. And these colors are actually backgated from this plot. And that means that any of the cells that are positive in this quadrant for green intensity or red intensity or dual, if they're necrotic or dual positive, they're appearing yellow in this image. If they're apoptotic or green, they're appearing green. And if they're dead, they're appearing red. And the nice thing is, as we change around, say, maybe this quadrant, all of these values are going to be updating for us in real time. Or better yet, if I change around one of our markers, you can see here on this image cytometry plot that we have, see if I can move this box out of the way and grab this, those values are going to be updating for us. And all of the statistics, including cell concentrations, are going to be updating with this. So it's a way that we can start analyzing this imaging data just like flow cytometry data. Again, each of the dots on this plot is not flow cytometry data. It's data that's coming directly from this image that was acquired on the Tali. And we can even take this down to a single cell analysis. So if we wanted to start looking at the single cell cutouts from this image and start getting information about them, we can do that as well. And you can even build in here an assay summary, which is something that's being distributed with a lot of the cell cycle analysis or the apoptosis kits now with the Tali software. And if you have the Plus version, you can bring your Attune data and your Tali data right into the same spot, and then you can start comparing your flow and your image cytometry results right next to each other, which in my opinion, that's a really cool thing. It's something that's going to help bring together the two technologies that are very close for looking at static images or cells that are on glass versus cells that we're running through a flow cytometer. So I just wanted to quickly summarize. I know we went through a lot of things very fast today. Let's see here if I can't find my summary slide. And it looks like it's kind of disappeared here behind everything else. There it is. So again, what I really wanted to stress is that FCS Express has this PowerPoint-like feel that if anybody has ever used Microsoft Office, they're going to be able to analyze their flow cytometry data. So that just breaks down one of the barriers to analyzing your data, at least in another piece of software. It's that it's easy to use and learn. We can work with any flow cytometry data, including the Attune data, and we can read directly from the Life Technologies Tali instrument, which is a nice option to have. And rescaling all of that data in FCS Express is really easy with that right-click and magnify axis or magnify resolution button. And if you have cell cycle analysis data, or if your customers have cell cycle analysis data, they can model that data for free in FCS Express, rather than having to set up manual markers and not getting the overlapping populations. And the immunophenotyping analysis, we try and make that as easy as possible with these batch and panel features in FCS Express, and the ability to summarize everything on one kind of page or one part of your analysis, and we can summarize statistics from any part of the layout anywhere else. And if anybody on the Life Technologies team wants to try out FCS Express with either the Attune data or the Tali data, you can get a free demo of the software at the Novo Software website. Your customers, if they're asking more about Cell Cycle and they want to do modeling, you can refer them there. They can get a free trial. And we're also happy to answer any questions that you may have or any questions that your customers may have. You can just send us an email at support@denovosoftware.com. So at this point, I just wanted to open up the floor. I wanted to see if anybody has any questions about anything we presented today. Are there any questions? I know we went really fast. I'm sorry about that.
I have a question. You've got the cell cycle on your multi-cycle thing. Do you also have like proliferation data?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one thing I didn't show today just for the sake of time. I did happen to have this up here, and it is with, of course, Attune data. You notice that this is proliferation data, and we have the proliferation modeling here as well. And we offered this tutorial to all of our customers with the Attune data, and the proliferation modeling, the full proliferation modeling comes for free with FCS Express. And it's going to allow you to do a lot of very nice things with that data.
Great.
And are there other questions? Okay. So if anybody thinks of any questions after the fact, we recorded this presentation today, so I'm going to try and make that available to everybody so you can slow down and take a look at what we kind of went over at your own discretion. If there's anything that you've seen that you'd like to learn more about, you can just feel free to get in touch with me directly. We can answer any questions that you have, and we can go from there. Okay.
Sean, I just wanted to thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for helping organize this. I'm glad we finally were able to get in touch with everybody, and I hope everybody just the take-home message from today again is working with any of that modeling data is very easy in FCS Express. So I think that's the take-home message. Looking at the Attune data. So thanks again for everybody coming out today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. Well, take care, everybody, and please be in touch with any questions.